Hey everybody, Rob here from Beard Train, and today I'm being joined by
C Train, choo choo,
Choo Choo, indeed. And this is going to be something different. I don't think either of us have ever done like a debate style.
Not even in school.
Yeah. So today something came to mind. We do a lot of tabletop gaming, like D&D, Pathfinder, things like that. And one thing that really gets on my nerves is min-maxing characters because it's trash.
That's a good way to start an argument.
Yeah. And it's just something that's always bugged me. And C-Train here, he's, I guess, go ahead and tell him how you feel about min-maxing.
I don't think it's necessarily the worst. It's not complete trash. But I can see where it has problems. But I think there are times where it has use as well, where it can be useful to certain degrees.
Okay. So now that you know where we stand, we're going to go ahead and start. So, huh? Yeah, stand. Fuck. So I guess the first thing is we should go into a little more detail on what min-maxing is. So min-maxing is where you take an aspect of a character, or just like your character in general, and make them as physically, mentally, and spiritually good as you can with the allotted points. Like
in Dark Souls, when you strength build is best build.
accurate. And so you put everything into strength, so you just like mollywop everything that comes at you.
See? It's good. It works. End of discussion.
So with min-maxing, I will admit that there are some pros and cons. I will leave it to C-Train to talk about the pros, because to me the pros don't come even close to outweighing the cons. So let's start with the pros. Pros of min-maxing a character.
Well, the first pro that I think is going to be the most obvious would be that when you max a certain stat or skill or what have you, you are very likely to be much better at that and much more successful when you use it upon your journey. Therefore, you are going to experience less failure, and more than likely that'll be appealing to whoever's running said character.
Okay. So my con to doing that, you become a one-trick pony. And we all know that if all you're good at is hitting stuff, not all conflicts can be solved by hitting things.
Hey, Barbarian, give me a will saving throw.
Yeah, what's that? I'm being attacked by magic? Sorry, mate. You're a little fucked. And there's nothing worse than having a barbarian under charm, just beating the shit out of his own teammates.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's happened. At least it won't be your pixie barbarian, because 3 damage, folks. 5 if she's raging.
Resistance the charm. Fey Bloodline for the win.
Yeah. But yeah, you just become a one-trick pony, and like, if you're climbing a mountain, it's not going to do you any good, because you don't have any skills allocated to climb. Things like that. Granted, yeah, you're going to have a butt-fucking crazy strength attribute, but in the end, it limits your character too much.
Now, in certain, depending on how the format of the tabletop is made, certain bonuses to stats, like strength, for instance, in a lot of versions of D&D will also put bonuses to certain skills, like climbing or maybe not athletics, but anything that would require brute strength, you would get that bonus as well. But not every format is like that. Some put skills completely to the side, and stats is its own thing, skills are its own thing, in which case, yeah, it's exactly what he's saying here. You would suffer in a lot of other aspects and only be good at like 1 or 2. So I could also see the con in that also affecting the experience of the player potentially, because unless that's all that they're focused to do, like throughout the entire time, which could also be a con in its own way because they could get bored of it. But anything else that they try to do, they are ultimately very highly likely to fail. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons that I usually min-max, is because I kind of... The dice, I'm not so lucky. If it's not like an actual dice game where it's just rolling dice, if it's a role-playing format, my dice rolls are garbage almost all the time. So that's why I usually put a lot into the stats that I care about, which is why I'm a little bit for min-maxing. But I would agree that there's a limit to it, because if you're just only going to succeed in that one thing, like we've covered, and that's going to ruin the experience for you and potentially for others.
Well, I'm glad you actually bring that up, because the next thing we're going to start talking about, so we've talked about kind of like the experience you yourself as a player has playing a min-max character. Now, the effect, there's two different kinds of min-maxing. There's one where you just focus on one aspect of the game, like one mechanic, beefy, just beating things down. There's another part of min-maxing where you focus, like you put as many points as you can into just being an overall jack of trades. So you're the melee character, you're the melee character, you're the magic character, you're the thief, you're everything. You excel in diplomacy, just all these things. 9 times out of 10, and this is a big disclaimer here, 9 times out of 10, that shit doesn't fucking work. Because either A, you don't have enough points to do it, or B, people are more considerate of the other players. Now this brings me to the next thing. The experience other players are going to have with those kinds of min-maxed characters. I know there have been times where I've made a thief, and my whole thing is finding traps, eliminating traps, keeping my party safe from traps. And then you have the fighter that says, well, I'm just going to use my 10-foot polearm and tap the floor to see if there's any traps. And it just completely made me...
Bro, that's my thing, bro!
Right. And there's nothing worse than being like, this is what my character brings to the party, and being robbed of it because either somebody takes it upon themselves to address that, or it's just like, I'm a Swiss Army character, it's kind of what I do. Fuck you, man.
On the Swiss Army Jack of all trades idea, on that kind of minimaxing, I would be totally against personally, and the reason is because being good at everything, first of all, in most times it's not possible, like we've discussed. But in the case that you do make it possible to the best degree that you can, it's not just about you. There are other players. That's the whole point, to have a party. If it was just about you, like it is in a lot of like Dark Souls or other games where it's just single player, that's one thing. But making your entire party useless or being useless to them is very harmful, both to just the game as a whole, but also the experience with the other players. You don't want to be that guy that everyone's like, oh boy, here comes George again. He really was glad when he couldn't make it last section. Here he comes. You know, you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, and like most of the times that you're going to run into this, it's going to be high-level games. So like, oh, everybody make a 20-level character, and you have the complete freedom to do whatever you want. You can have magic items and everything. Now, there are some magic items that are completely busted, like Belt of Giant Strength. That gives you, I believe, a +4 to your strength score. Yeah, and it like increases your lifting capacity and things like that. So you can effectively take a 20th level bard, make him fighter, rogue, sorcerer, everything. You can do everything with a 20th level bard because they essentially are that Swiss Army character when they're supposed to be mainly like support.
Yep. That right there is proof of ruining game experience, just flat out.
Yeah, and there's so many great things that come from having just either a par character or a subpar character. Like, we'll talk about my character Blight. So we're playing this Blood of Heroes game, and this is actually where this whole idea for this video came from. There are so many people, and there's nothing against them. They're all really cool people. They've more or less min-maxed their characters to either take no damage, so they're completely impervious, or damn near close, or to be... like there's one, I forget his name, but he runs a speedster character.
Ah, yeah.
And he runs at like Mach speeds. And here I am as this character Blight, who has 2 powers. Well, 3 powers, really. He has Cell Rot, Disintegration, and Teleportation. Okay, now I know at first glance you think, oh, well, those are some pretty powerful things, right? Right. But the way that I role play this character is he doesn't like using his powers.
Guys.
Yeah, so all he has is teleportation that he's willing to use on a regular basis. But I can't really say the same for everybody else. They're just flaunting their powers left and right. And it actually led to one character's downfall because he made this character who gets angered easily or something like that. And he ended up... so to tell you how disintegration in Cell Rot works, for those of you watching, is if anything makes contact with Blight's skin, it immediately starts taking damage. Mm-hmm. And if it takes enough damage, it can either take a limb away or just erase the character completely.
Real stuff.
Real shit. And this character rolled poorly to break these cuffs because I can't break these cuffs. Whatever. And he accidentally made contact with my skin. Took some damage. He immediately went into a rage. And again, this is the kind of character that excels primarily at hand-to-hand combat. And he's got a bunch of drawbacks that just make him a berserker, essentially. Which, I mean, for the setting, it works. But if you're going to be working in a team, not so great. So he chases us down, and immediately... Blight gets grabbed by the guy who can run at Mach speed and is just bolted across the room. And then I come to find out that the other guy, the Berserker, can also run at Mach speeds. So it's like, what does this speedster bring that this Berserker does not?
Unfortunately, at this point, only comedy.
Right. And... You know, at first I didn't realize, like, oh, hey, I'm moving at Mach speeds. I didn't find out till later that, like, yeah, this is how fast the guy moves. And it's the second time that he's moving Blight like this. So my response as a player is just like, there's no way the average person with the average constitution should be able to withstand that. So what happens? Running at Mach speed, Blight is just... a blur of vomit. There's just a line of vomit following Blight's body.
Made it easy to find you, I suppose.
Yeah. But long story short, I know it's already kind of long, but we ran into this NPC who just one-shot the Berserker. And it's because, you know, his min-maxing and his character focus got in the way.
So that brings up another good point. Same campaign, referencing the same characters. Rob over here wasn't able to go ahead and partake in this particular one. He was busy. But
Family.
yeah, it's a perfect example. Same character having the same issue. So another con, I guess you could say, about min-maxing, it affects the GM, the dungeon master who's trying to create the story. They're trying to create a world for you to enjoy. Not to just, for the most part, not to just curb stomp. To enjoy, to become immersed. To have fun. Basically being a character in a story that somebody's writing. And when you min-max a character, especially in this regard with this, Bloody Heroes has a point system that allows to kind of affect the con that I would have had with min-maxing, that makes it to where, since there's less chance for failure in some areas, it makes you less of an interesting character and less cool things can happen by mistake. Bloody Heroes balances that a little bit with basically drawbacks you can take that force certain situations to happen. But regardless, he got basically one shot again later on in another battle. And he was really upset by this. And there were some other factors of why he kind of lashed out a little bit about it, but he got really upset about it. And I can understand he's made to be like a physically strong character that also has pretty decent stats and other things, but since he's made a strong character, the person who designs the game has to be able to give you a challenge. And sometimes that ends up meaning that he goes a little too far. And now nobody's having fun. I was having a little bit of that problem too. In the battle that we had with people who actually were a challenge, we were getting swatted. The only person that didn't get swatted was one person in that combat. And that...
I wasn't there.
We have a person who runs a robot. And that robot has speaking of min-maxing, a certain ability that when he should have dropped, he didn't. And in fact, went from having less health than he did when he got hit to having more. So, yeah, with the way that the system works. So, it's interesting with min-maxing because I think it really messes with the GM in the sense of, I want you to have a challenge, I want to test the waters. If all the characters are strong at one thing, or at all things, then so do the NPCs that you would encounter. They have to be strong at what you're weak against, or strong at everything, stronger at everything even. And we got swatted, and that's what happens, and nobody likes that, especially on your second session, getting dropped the first and the second. But that's what happens. You're so powerful that your drawbacks that are so huge.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off, but what that's also going to do for the player playing the character is it's going to almost force them to think, if there's ever an opportunity for conflict, I have to do it. Like, I have to fight this enemy.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
Whereas, like, Blight is like, hey guys, let's not fight because I'm not the most sturdy character. Let's, try and talk this out. Even though it is a villain campaign, he's still acclimating to his villain life, coming from being an ex-hero, things like that. And it's those kinds of characters that are just like, the only thing I bring to this party is combat. So I feel like every opportunity for it, that's my time to shine. So I have to. And when 9 times out of 10, like both of these situations, probably would have been best to just flee.
I think that brings up the con that I brought up before, which is a good one, is it affects the game in general, but it makes a less interesting character with less cooler moments. If you're good at everything, or you're just really good at one thing, it's going to stigmatize the person that's all I will do in this situation because that's what I'm best at, rather than, as Rob said, taking other routes that other characters might excel in. So what could have been like a cool negotiation moment that we get something really cool out of, maybe even an ally or something like that, will devolve to a hack and slash session. And a lot of people, especially in our player group, even complain about that, where this isn't a shot at D&D or anything, but a lot of people I know don't like D&D in particular because it focuses more on multiple combat encounters depending on who's role-playing it, and also kind of the system in general, just a little, rather than giving the option to solve puzzles or the option to use diplomacy, which it's there, but it seems like it almost favors battles a little bit more.
Well, I kind of feel like that's on the DM, right?
Yep,
So we've seen, and this is a subject for another video, but to kind of bring that subject to close, it's really how creative can the DM be, and what kind of players are you dealing with? So, again, we can talk about that at another time. But
basically, to end that con, min-maxing can kill creativity and cool moments.
Truth. Now, you remember when this started as like I'm against min-maxing, and you're like, yeah, min-maxing's okay.
To bring out a pro, since we've been pretty anti-min-maxing.
Okay.
This doesn't really have to do with like the experience. It's a little bit outside of it. So maybe this pro is a little less justified. Maybe it's not. But I think having someone who knows how to min-max isn't a bad thing to have. Mm-hmm. They can, if they refrain from it in the game and they use it to know if someone's like breaking the system, or to like I'm essentially looking at this as like you're a beta tester almost. If you were making your own format, which I know some DMs have done, they've combined certain different things to run their own.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Yeah, knowing someone who knows how to min-max a system easily can show you where your faults are in making that system and to refine it and perfect it. Mm-hmm. It also, I feel like it's good knowledge for someone to have on hand, just because what if somebody does want to be like just really good at this one thing, but also wants to make like average and everything to have an interesting character? At least one person on the team knows exactly how to min-max that immediately to have that done and done. So I think it's good to be able to have someone who knows the system, because a min-max sister is going to know the system. But that's more of like an outside of gameplay perspective, so maybe a little less justified, perhaps, in that regard.
And I would agree. Knowing how to min-max and actually abusing the min-max, the idea of min-maxing, are almost two completely different things. Mm-hmm. So, like, I've done it before. I know the Star Wars 4th Edition Saga Edition, like, front and back. And if you want a Jedi, holy shit, I can make you a Jedi.
Call this man! Call him now!
Right. 855, call a fucking me. And, but, like, it's not something that you abuse, because Star Wars isn't always about combat. 90% of any Star Wars movie is diplomacy. It's diplomacy, just talking. That's really all it is.
Yeah, you know, that's true.
So, I guess I think we've come to a pretty good consensus that, you know, in theory, min-maxing is good, but in practice, it's more detrimental than it is anything.
I would agree.
So, yeah, let us know what your thoughts of min-maxing are, and any experiences you've had. Just leave them down in the comments below.
In the comments!
Yeah, well, it's a good place for conversation and things like that. Do you have anything else to add to the subject?
Not really, other than, in summary, I think we pointed out more cons than pros. Maybe there's pros that we didn't see. Maybe there are cons that we didn't see. Like we said, mention in the comments below. And like Rob said, overall, min-maxing while playing, but having the knowledge to be able to do so could be useful, like in the character creation process, or just in general, especially for a GM. The person who's running it should be able to have the knowledge to do so, just for proof that they know kind of back and front, or at least some of what the system they're using, they know how to run it. And I think that's important. But
truth. Well, in closing, guys, thank you very much for checking out this video. Make sure, if you haven't, leave a like, hit the notification bell. That way you get the next video from Beard Train. And also, we have a Patreon that if you want to support the channel monetarily, you can go ahead and check that out at patreon.com/thebeardtrain. And again, I'm Rob.
C-Train!
We'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Peace!